Hi, my name is Eric Hurley. I teach sustainability at AB Tech in Asheville, and I'm doing a bus conversion. Along the way, I found out a lot of things that I didn't know about or didn't think about when dealing with a bus, and I wanted to share that with you. I've had a lot of questions about insulating a bus and how to stop thermal bridging and so forth. So I wanted to take a moment to explain how all this works. So like I said, I teach at AB Tech Community College in Asheville, and you are more than welcome to go to our website at abtech.edu and check out all of the different programs that we have. And you can also go to the Asheville Green School on Facebook, and you can like that page and follow along for other stuff as well. So if you want to find out a little bit more about thermodynamics, check out Khan Academy, and it has some free little programs on here talking about thermodynamics. Sometimes they get a little bit deep, other times it's okay. But I'm going to try to start you off a little bit simply here and talk about thermodynamics a little bit. So the second law of thermodynamics, won't even go into the first law. The second law of thermodynamics basically says that everything in nature will equalize. All right, so meaning that everything will go around. We can't create energy. It is just transferred from one to another, and that's actually the first law of thermodynamics. But basically, the second law just says that everything in nature wants to equalize. Heat. Hot transfers to cold. Cold don't transfer to hot. Cold does not move by itself. It is heavier than hot air, and so, but for the most part, when we're talking about thermodynamics, hot is the one that's going to be doing the movement. Pressure, high pressure obviously goes to low pressure. You know that when you blow up a balloon, it's going to equal out and try to be the same. So with that said, does a hot air rise? Well, we've always been led to believe that hot air rises, but unfortunately, no. Cold air is more dense and heavier than hot air, and therefore it sinks because of gravity. And the hot air is displaced by the cold air sinking, so it's going to go up. So let's think about what's going to space. We got a pocket of hot air, we got a pocket of cold air. What's going to happen? That hot air is going to overtake the cold air. Okay, keep that in mind. We're going to keep going now. So let's talk about thermal transfer. And so in that, then we have to start thinking about, well, how does this heat move? So radiation is one of the movements of the heat transfer, and it's direct. So let's think about this. I take my lighter, and I can hold my hand up against it like this, and you can see it glowing. Well, I'm feeling nothing more than radiation. It is the heat that's coming off of this lighter directly straight to my hand. Convection. Now let's take this lighter, and instead of putting my hand here without blowing out the little flame, I'm going to put it over top, and it gets a lot hotter a lot quicker, because now I'm feeling radiation and convection. In other words, it's heating the air, and the cold air, remember that the hot air does not move upon itself. The cold air is being sunk down and is being replaced, just like what's on our screen here. If this flame here is heating up air or water or whatever, you're going to have this cyclone effect. So convection works with air, liquid, and gas, okay? Conduction. Here's where the old school bus comes into play, a lot of times, or most of it. All right, so if we took two bodies of water at different temperatures, and we connected the two of them, as we have done here with a piece of copper, what's going to happen? So let's say that there's 100-degree water here, and there's 50-degree water here. Over time, the hot water is, the hotter water is going to transfer over into the colder water, and both of these are going to become the same temperature, roughly 75 degrees. Now that's saying that we're in a vacuum and there's nothing else that's going to interfere with the transfer. In other words, if we had it in a room that was 70 degrees, then that 50-degree water is going to rise a little bit because the ambient air around it is higher. Okay, so I know that gets a little confusing, but you know, the conduction is where we're moving thermal energy through a solid. And I won't go into the quiz time here. So we have a school bus here, and you know, I see people all the time. They're getting these school buses, they're not removing any windows, they're leaving this ceiling on, and they're not insulating anywhere in it at all. So what's going on here? Well, we got cold air that is going to try to sink in under this bus, and it's going to eventually it's going to infiltrate into the bus, known through a phenomenon known as stacked effect. All right, and we're going to, you know, the hot air is going to, or the hot energy is going to seep out through our ceiling, and this whole cycle is going to continue and continue and continue, and you can't get the bus warm. All right, so as you know, the whole bus is metal, and it's hard to keep it warm, and especially when you got this old joker in here. So all of these ribs that are in the bus are basically a hat channel. And so on top of, I'm gonna have to do it with a different color. So this top here goes across this hat channel. It's just a skin, a very thin piece of metal that goes all the way around the bus, and it is bolted in or riveted in to this hat channel here. Then on the bottom side, we have the inner wall or inner ceiling of our bus here, and it is riveted or screwed into place. Now I have, in my bus, I have taken my ceiling down, so I no longer have a metal ceiling, and I have insulated all the area in between my ribs, and I have tried to insulate a little bit inside the ribs just by shooting great stuff or some other type of expansion foam through these holes here. Got to be careful because you want to make sure that all of this cures properly. So you can't just, you know, lay into it and go crazy with it. You got to take it at time. And generally what you have to do is bore a bigger hole than what's needed so you can get your tube from your spray foam up here and work your way down very slowly. Well, that don't always work, because the old sun's going to come out and it's going to hit on the surface, this metal surface here. And if it's any color other than white, or if you have polished it to a mirror finish, then you're going to be absorbing heat. So especially if it's black, any other kind of dark color, it's going to absorb heat more. And what happens, and this is where that thermal bridging comes in place. We're heating up this outside flange here on the hat channel, and it is moving down and into the bottom of it. Now, if you have left your ceiling or you have replaced your ceiling, well, what happens is that's going to just feed out in both directions, and you're going to have heat gain inside your bus. All right. Now so here we've got radiation going on, and here we've got convection going on, and here we got conduction going on, and then here we have convection going on. So all three of these are, you know, playing a part in heating up this old school bus here. Now, what if, like I say, we took and we just polished this, we made it a nice big mirror all the way across through here, then we're going to reflect a lot of that that heat energy that's coming in through the sun. It's going to reduce this a little bit, and in a sense, hopefully we can knock this out a little bit and kind of slow it down a little. Well, another thing that you can do is eliminate the contact at this point. One thing you could do is you can add rigid insulation to separate this metal from the inside of your bus, okay? And we decided not to do that because we would lose more headroom in here than what we really wanted. So what we did instead was we went with a small piece of what's called seal. And seal is just a piece of foam, small, thin piece of foam that stops this from touching the metal. However, when we put the screws in to hold our wood, then here we go again. That is going to transfer all the way down. How can you eliminate that? One thing that is possible, let me just back out of here and close this up a little bit. I have seen a couple of people do this, and it definitely makes sense, is that you tack a piece of wood onto the side of your hat track. And you have your fastener going into the side of it. And then you have your other fastener going down. This is whatever, wood or whatever. And then that way we stop this transfer at this point here. We don't have any more of the heat transfer that's going to come through that hat track there. We could even do it even better and put that rigid insulation back on there. And then when we put whatever wood or whatever that we have in here, then the only thing that we're going to have problems with is, actually we're not going to have a problem, because the screws here are not directly tied to your hat track. Therefore, you're going to eliminate any and all thermal bridging here and all. And I don't know what is the best way to call it. Is it thermal bridging? Is it thermal bypass? So basically, we're building a bridge by putting this screw or this fastener in here, and could be, we could call that a bridge for sure. Otherwise, if I fill this full of foam, then I'm thinking that it's bypassing all of that. So either way, a bridge or a bypass, nevertheless, we're having problems with it for sure. So it's super important that you make sure that you insulate your school buses all the way around everything. And let me explain to you what I mean by everything. I have decided that I want a gas refrigerator in here. So my gas refrigerator sits in here somewhere down the line there. And it has a pocket in here where, because there's gas, all right, there's a little bit of gas going out here. And this cools through what is called evaporative cooling. So as you know, that if you put alcohol or anything on your skin, it feels really cold because it is evaporating super fast. And when you get evaporation, you have cooling effect. So I know that sounds funny. We got gas here, we got a heat source, but it's making cold. But trust me, it works. So on the side of this booger right here, I've got a little vent where, it has to, this fire has to have oxygen to breathe, and we don't want to take it from the inside of the bus. And since we do have a gas, then we want to make sure that this gas goes up and out through a little vent up here at the top. Well, because of this space in here, now I'm gonna look down on the bus. All right, so I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna look down on it. All right, so here's the outside wall of the bus. Here is my refrigerator, and here's that space that I'm talking about. This space here is right here. So I insulated this wall. Let's show some insulation. I insulated this whole wall down through here, but because I've got a big old opening here and a big old opening here and air traveling through it, then this is cold. So what I have to do is I'm going back and I'm going to add insulation in at this point here to eliminate any kind of heat loss or heat gain through these little spaces here. Let me show you what that looks like. So I took my thermal imaging camera and I shot some places on my bus, and I wanted to kind of share that with you. I've shared it with another site or another post, but I just kind of wanted to give some explanation on that. So let me go over here and find this. There it is. There is my refrigerator. You can see the front of the refrigerator here, and then there's that airspace. All right, so I do have to take the refrigerator back out and hook up the gas line and test the gas line. But so as I do take that out, I will insulate the sidewalls of this chase here, this gas chase, so that I don't have this great big blue space here. And for you guys who don't understand what you're looking at, so you've got in this thermal imaging camera, we're looking at hot air through the orange here, or hotter air, and we're seeing colder air in here. Now, in the middle of this is telling me what the temperature is right there. All right, so this temperature right here is 60.9. And so obviously this is going to be much colder over here. So as we go through this, you can see where my ribs are. So like I say, I added seal in that. And if you don't know what seal is, let me show you what a picture of it is. So this is seal. You can get it at any supply house, construction supply house. It's just real thin foam that we usually put under the mud seal here so that we don't have any air coming in through into the house. And it works really well because this piece of wood and the foundation are not going to come together perfect, and you're going to have air gaps in here, much kind of like what you see here. But we can caulk this. Caulk usually don't work too well on masonry to wood because of the expansion and contraction rates that differ on this. So any kind of mineral material, such as concrete or rock, brick, they expand and contract with heat and cold. Whereas organic material, living material, or material that has lived, is going to expand with moisture. So this gets wet, it's going to expand. If this gets dry, it's going to shrink. If this gets hot, it's going to expand. If it gets cold, it's going to shrink. So that kind of gives you an idea of why we use this seal, just to kind of, stop it up in there. And so we have to use that in here to try to stop some of this bridging. I went to the wrong one here. So you can see where the ribs are, and you can definitely see where the screws are in there as well. Like I say, I did put some foam here, not a great deal, but if you really want to stop this massively, then you're going to have to put maybe an inch, maybe a little bit more of foam between the ribs and whatever sealing material you got. But of course, if you don't do something about your windows, then you're just going to continue to have problems. And so the bus windows, DOT says that any windows on a vehicle on a side or back have to be tempered. So let me explain to you what tempered glass is for those of you who don't know. So tempered glass does this when it breaks. Regular glass breaks in shards and is a dagger. So if we're going down the road and something like this happens, then we could potentially hurt or kill ourselves or the people around us. So tempered glass is required on all side and rear windows on any motor vehicle, so that if it breaks, then it shatters into a small piece. The front windshield on all U.S. cars, and like I say, this is only in the U.S. You can't. I'm sure that there's other laws in other places, but that's one of the reasons why our cars in the United States, not only with the emission controls devices that are in there, some of these other countries, they don't have seat belts. They don't require seat belts. As far as I know, New Hampshire is the only state that doesn't require seat belts. Maybe there's others I'm not sure of, but you got to have tempered glass on the sides and the rear, and you got to have laminated glass on the windshield. And that's the difference on there. So when you talk about these different types of glass, I see folks putting RV windows into their buses. They're taking the regular windows out and putting these RV windows in there. And they may help improve the R value very little, but not a great deal. But you have different options with these type of windows where you can slide them, where you've got an awning window. You don't just have the up and down windows. And also you can get screens for these windows too, and that makes it much better. But nevertheless, these windows on the bus, get back to that picture that I had, got a bathtub. And then this bathtub, I have a drain. And if I don't plug that drain and I try to fill it up full of water, that water is just going to fly out of there real quickly. Let's think about this. I have a bus that has those nice big windows in it. I can insulate all of this right here, all of that right there, and I've still got problems because I've got, let me change colors on that. I have either heat loss or I have heat gain. And this is a big old huge problem. And you can quote me on that, big old huge. So let's look at this. A single pane of glass is an insulator. If I had a flame on one side of it and I put my hand over here on the other side of it, then I'm probably going to definitely feel the effects of this heat, because once it hits there, this is direct radiation. It's going to hit this and become conduction, which it's going to fly through there very, very quickly. And then, if I touch the window, I'm going to hurt myself. But otherwise, this is going to give off radiation, re-radiate, and I can feel it on this side. In a house, we have 2 panes of glass most of the time. This is called insulating glass. Sometimes we have 3, depending on how expensive you want to pay for this glass. And inside of here is air or argon gas, or it's vacuumed sealed. Any number of different things in here. And of course, the air is going to cost you this much. The argon gas is going to, it's going to be 3 times as much. The vacuum packed is probably going to be 2 anyway. So it depends on how much money you want to spend on your windows to, how much insulation properties they have. Now, remember what I said about DOT? They require this glass all to be tempered. Well, that just shot that out of the window, because that's how much you're talking about now. So to do a proper bus, insulating it and doing something about the windows, the insulated glass is the only way to go. So in this bus, again, there's other things that, that can transfer this heat. Number one, we have the ribs, in which we've plenty talked about. You've got these hidden spaces where the back of the refrigerator is. I have that second metal door. And how do you insulate the door without removing the door? This is the shower. So this is just the deepest point in that. And this drain runs to a holding tank. So wait a minute. How is that getting cold? So we're looking at our bus. And on my bus, I've got this shower. I'll show the little shower head up here. And there's a drain. And this drain runs down to a holding tank. Well, this holding tank is outside of the heated space in our bus. It's underneath it. So the outside temperature, and in this case, was about 32 degrees. It's going to heat up all the air and fluid that may be in here. There's no fluid in here at this point. But it's going to heat up all the air in here, and it's going to be really, 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 really cold. And this air, is going to, the heat, I should say, moves to cold. All right. It's trying to get cold. So it's going to build up all of this to a certain point in here. And that is where you're going to see the cold air in there. It's going to be the lowest thing in the entire bus, hugging the floor on here. But what it's doing all the time is it's stealing the hot energy that's coming in from the hot air. This is the driver's seat, and down here in we've got the pedals, the brake pedal and the gas pedal, and then right there, this is our enemy at this point, is that big old shaft that's running down to the front tires. So let's go back and think about the way that looks. How does that work? We have our front tire. We got our bus. Mine's a flat nose, so I'm just going to draw a flat nose. And I've got my seat in here, steering wheel, and then I've got this shaft that runs all the way down outside of the bus. Okay, so here's a floor. This runs metal to metal to metal to metal to metal all the way outside the bus. Now, how do I separate this? I can't. Okay, I have to maintain metal to metal to metal. I can't just put it, take this section out and put some plastic in here and expect it to work. It's just not going to happen. So what happens is this little booger gets cold, and heat is being stole from inside on this thing. The heat's trying to keep this thing up, and the cold's kind of just winning because it's pulling that warmth out and shedding it to the outside. And that's why we have this cold area in here. The heater in the front has a fresh air vent that runs to the outside. So the same thing actually happens on it and can be a problematic thing. So in all, the only way that we can stop completely and totally is we got to separate that outside skin of the bus and the floor. We have to separate it with some sort of, we got to isolate it. That's what I'm trying to think of. We got to isolate it from the interior of the bus so that we don't have heat loss or heat gain. But we've got these windows in here that have stopped this insulation, this separation of inside and outside. So how are we going to fix that? One of the things that I plan on doing with our bus is I'm going to use window quilts. It's like drapes, big thick drapes is all it is. But I want to explain to you kind of what I'm talking about. So let's say here's my rod, and I'm going to have my drapes hanging off of it, or like I say, a window quilt. which is thick, has lots of fluffy stuff in here, just like a bat insulation in your house. The fluff is the stuff. And on this, I am going to put I'm going to sew a piece of Mylar insulation into this. Let me show you what that looks like. This is Mylar. It's a plastic sheet that is super reflective. All right. So remember that I spoke to you about the three different types of heat transfers. We've got radiation, we've got convection, and we've got conduction. So with this insulation, we're trying to separate the metal from the heated space of our bus or the cooling space of our bus, and we're using foam insulation in most cases to separate this. So we're cutting off the conduction and we're trying to reduce the convection. But what about the radiation? So with this piece of Mylar in here, we have now a reflective surface that will work to our advantage in a couple of things. Now, this needs to be on the heated side of whatever it is. So if we're going to draw a line down through here, and over here is the summer months. Got the old sun over here just beating down on this thing. We're going to have that Mylar to the outside. Now it's going to be sewed up under, we're not going to see it, but it'll be there. And so when the rays come in, they're going to hit that Mylar and they're going to bounce out. If in the wintertime months, we're going to take these curtains over and we're going to turn them around so that the Mylar is to the inside. And, we've got our fire in here, or whatever. We got our heat. I hope we don't have a fire in here, or it's contained in a stove anyway. And so this heat is going to be redirected back inside, while all the while we have all this nice fluffy insulation in here to prevent any conduction or convection from transferring any heats through there. It's going to hit that and it's going to stop. It's not going to continue on. So we're dealing with the radiation with the shiny Mylar. We're dealing with the convection and the conduction with our nice, fluffy, thick window blanket. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask me. I'll try to help. Thanks, guys. I'll see you.